Um, I want to talk about one of the biggest misconceptions of awakening. And that misconception is that it is one and done. That when we have an awakening experience, a moment of enlightenment, a satori, whatever you want to call it, that it happens and then it's done. You're good for the rest of your life. You become a holy being and walk around barefoot on the earth, healing and bringing joy and light to everyone you meet. When the reality is, it's not quite that simple. And this is something that Adyashanti, this Buddhist monk and teacher, talks about in this book, The End of Your World. And I've recently discovered this book, and it is amazing. It is a really, really clear guide to anyone that has experienced a spiritual awakening and is trying to navigate it, or trying to get to a place of spiritual awakening. And one of the things that Adyashanti talks about, which I really connect with because I experienced it myself, and a lot of the teachers of enlightenment that I've spoken with, or people who have had this experience, say, is that you kind of go through this initial opening, and everything kind of drops away. All of the conditioning, all of the things you felt like you have to do in life, all of the obligations, all of the etiquette, all of this stuff just kind of disappears. You see through it, and you realize that, none of that is real. That you made it up, and you've been making it up this whole time. And what comes immediately after that is this immense feeling of elation and freedom. Because all of this psychological weight and burden that you've been carrying for pretty much your entire life, you've been you've been building on it, you've been adding new stuff to this burden of conditioning, and all of that suddenly drops away. And it can happen just for a moment, it can happen for a day, it can happen for a week, sometimes a month or longer, and it is immensely just you feel light. You feel so light. But there's something interesting that happens. And it may happen again after just a moment, a day, a week, a month, sometimes a year. Your old conditioning, these old burdens, these old ways you feel like you have to be, they start to creep back in. And most people aren't expecting this. And at first, you may not even notice that they're starting to creep back in, that the ego structure is starting to reconstitute itself. But over time, you'll start to notice that, okay, well, actually, I feel a little bit heavier now. I feel like things are getting under my skin again. I'm getting angry. I'm getting annoyed. There's a stiffness or a constriction that is happening. And most people think at this point that something has gone terribly wrong, that they've made a mistake somehow. But in this book, Adyashanti says that actually there's no mistake. This is just the next phase of the awakening process. This is when, after you've had your initial opening, and you've sensed that all of the patterns that you've taken on from your family, from your friends, from your culture, all the stuff that you think you have to do to please people, to look good, to succeed, all of that doesn't matter. In the face of the truth, in the face of the universe, none of that really matters. And what happens in the next phase, after this elation, after this opening, is your ego structure starts to come back. And it starts to come back because it doesn't yet trust that you can actually live in this state for the rest of your life. Remember, the ego structure is something that has been building up ever since we were a little child. And it's meant to help us navigate this world. It's meant to help us interact with other human beings in a way that keeps us physically safe and keeps us part of the family or tribe or clan. It is here to help, make sure that we have money to buy food, to keep a house over our heads, all of this stuff. And so it's this very clever way in which our psyche, our brains, our biological system has figured out to keep us alive. Our physical biology keeps us alive with our heart, with our lungs, with our cells. That is the kind of hard wiring that keeps this being alive. And then the ego is kind of like the psychological, the mental hardwiring that also is focused on survival, but it's focused on the social level of survival. How do we make sure that we are emotionally connecting to others so that there is that cohesion, so that there is that cooperation, and so we're not left alone in the jungle to die? So the reason why the ego starts to come back and creep back in, and all of this old conditioning starts to come back in, is because there isn't yet a trust that we can just be totally free, totally present to the present moment, not worrying about the future, not thinking about the past. We don't yet have this innate trust. And this is where people oftentimes get very confused and disoriented because, okay, I've heard about awakening. It should be this amazing feeling, and I've had it. I've sensed it. It's happened to me, and I should now be good for the rest of my life. And why is it that I'm suddenly worried about money again or afraid that I might die? And meanwhile, as you are experiencing that fear or that lack of money or that desire for people's approval, there's a part of you that knows that it's fake. There's a part of you that knows that this isn't real. And yet you're seeing yourself act and enact all of these old patterns and conditionings. And this is not only confusing and disorienting for the person that has experienced this moment of awakening and is now back into, illusion, the dream state, as Adyashanti describes it. But it's also confusing for the people around them, because suddenly, at one point, they look and they see this person that has become incredibly wise and clear and present, loving, and all of these things. And then the next moment, or a day or a week later, suddenly they're incredibly deluded. Maybe they think they are, the next Messiah, and they're writing a book to revolutionize the world, and are gonna. It's all mixed up with sense of grandiosity and sense of making money. Maybe they don't say it out loud, but sometimes that is a very powerful force, especially in our culture today. And all of this is really the survival mind, the ego constructs coming back into play. So what do we do? What do we do when this starts to happen? We've had a moment of awakening. We've had this experience. We know that all of this conditioning is illusory, and yet it's coming back. So what do we do about it? So in the book, Adyashanti, he says, I don't want to give you strategy, techniques, or very specific things that you have to do. I want to give you general strategies that help. And one of the things that Adyashanti writes about is the importance of inquiry, the importance of really looking at, honestly and sincerely, what is it that is coming up in you. So for me, I'll speak personally, money is a really big wound that I have. I've had this ever since childhood, and it was a really difficult thing when I was growing up. We didn't have a lot of money, and it was constantly a place where my parents argued all the time. And so I took this on, and so money became this really complicated thing for me. And I think it is for a lot of people, especially because in our world today, that's what people are striving for oftentimes, but it also is something that we have a lot of wounding around. So one of the things that, if I'm to let go of my conditioning around money and around, this unhealthy attachment to it, I need to look at what is at the core of this. What is at the base of this conditioning? And when you ask that question, you can drop down, and you can even listen for that voice inside of you, or for that feeling in your body that is tense or agitated or asking for attention. And when you listen to that, when you really try and hear what it's saying, you can start to hear, oh, okay, there's a voice inside me that says, I'm scared, or I'm angry, or this isn't going to work, this isn't enough. And in talking with it, in talking and getting down through the level of thought to the level of emotion, and then even further down to the level of belief. What is the belief that you took on about the world? Because that is really where the conditioning comes in. We've taken on beliefs that if I do this, then this will happen. If somebody thinks this, then this will happen to me. Or, A then B, A then B. That's all the conditioning is. And really this is, what Adyashanti describes as our karmic load. It's cause and effect, A then B. You ring the bell, the dog salivates. That is what conditioning is about. And when we're trying to unravel the conditioning that is inside of us, we need to look at what is it that we've taken on? What belief about ourselves or the world have we taken on? Once we can get down to that level and really see through it and really let go and release this belief, release this energy, release this emotional structure that we are holding in our body and in our psyche and our mind, that is the work of healing. That is the work of, in essence, becoming whole. It is becoming complete. It is not rejecting any part of ourselves. And it is through this practice of healing, of letting go, of releasing, that we are also gaining greater freedom and liberation for our mind, for our consciousness, and for our whole being. This is the work that we have to do after awakening. And ironically, this is also the same work that we have to do before awakening. One of the funny things that Adyashanti writes about in this book is that there really isn't a whole lot of difference between what kind of work we're doing before awakening and after awakening. It's really the same thing. It's really just finding our conditioning, finding those core beliefs, emotions, beliefs that lead to emotions, lead to thoughts, all of this spiral, this cycle, and let go of it. Release it. And the difference between the period of inner work before awakening and the period of work after awakening is simply that we have had this moment of opening. And again, it could be just a moment, it could be a few days, a week, whatever it was for you. We have this moment where you suddenly see, not only from a bird's eye view of what's going on, but from a God's eye view. And you understand the whole plan of the universe. And I say plan not to imply that you have some kind of esoteric knowledge about the way that the cosmos is constructed. No, it's much simpler than that. It's about seeing through, again, all of the things that we make up, all of the stuff that we've just been making up about how we should be, how we should act, what is the correct way to be? What is the right way to be enlightened? What is the right way to be spiritual? When we let go of all of that, I can just see that we are human beings on this planet, in this universe, that are doing their best to survive and make sense of this world. Once we start to see that all of the things we thought that we had to do, all the things that we made up for ourselves aren't real, we release so much. And we then come back to the work, that inner work, letting go, the releasing of conditioning, but from a different perspective. We now know that we are not confined to just this old role or identity that we have been playing all our lives. In fact, we don't have to be consistent with ourselves at all. We can shoot off and become whatever it is that we need to be in whatever moment that we're in. And that's one of the great liberations that comes with this way of being, is that we're liberated from ourselves. We're free from our own identity. We don't have to be enslaved to our own narrow view of, well, I was this person all my life, and it would be weird if I just hopped off and started to be some other kind of way. We feel like there needs to be some kind of common sense progression in our personality or how we're showing up, when in reality we're just making that up. We have no obligation to be consistent with ourselves. We have an obligation, however, to be consistent with reality, because, again, something that Adyashanti says in this book is that reality is always consistent with itself. And when we are in alignment with reality, then life is bliss. When we are out of alignment with reality, then we experience pain. So, again, we go through this moment of awakening. We see through the illusion of conditioning. And then after that initial honeymoon period, we get to a place of where our conditioning usually starts to creep back in. And the work that we have to do after this point is the same work that we were doing before, which is letting go and releasing our old patterns, our old beliefs that are driving our emotions and driving our thoughts. And as we do that, we become free. We become more and more free, more and more able to exist and live in the state of openness, in the state of flow, in the state of lightness. And we are no longer confined to the role or identity, this obligation of who we think we need to be, who we think we need to be in the future, or who we feel we were in the past, and so we are beholden to that old self. We don't need to be any kind of particular way for the people around us. We don't have to do anything. And there's something interesting that happens here. A lot of people are like, well, wouldn't you become an asshole? Wouldn't you become a jerk? Wouldn't you, if you could do anything, that doesn't, it sounds like you just become self-centered. Well, the thing is, you would be if you are still being driven by your ego conditioning. And oftentimes the ego tries to co-opt this moment and say, okay, look, we can do anything we want now. Let's do what we want. Let's do everything that we want to do. And people can become very self-centered in that way. But the thing that happens with a true awakening, and this, again, it could just be a moment, it could be something that you glimpse for a little bit. But the thing that happens is that you realize and recognize that when you say me, when you say I, you don't only mean this body. You don't only mean this personality. You mean the whole of existence. Everyone that ever lived, every being that exists around you, all of the rocks and the space dust, everything, that's you. And so when you are free from your social role and identity and obligations, you are free to be in alignment with reality. And that alignment with reality is interesting, because it's not just this kind of cosmic, abstraction where you just sit on a mountaintop and you kind of like are lost in the beauty of infinity. No, you're in touch with infinity. You know that it's there. It's there. It's all around you. You are it, unfolding. But you also are in touch with your incarnation, with your humanness. You're still going to die. This body is going to die. You're still going to feel pain. And you're still going to have empathy and love for the other beings around you. Except you're not going to be confined to have empathy or, show, love in a kind of tit for tat sort of way. You are released from this kind of obligation or this neediness that you think, okay, well, I will do something for them, they'll do something for me. Or I love this person, I'm giving them my love, and I expect them to love me in return. Which isn't, pure love. It's a kind of love with strings attached. Damn it. Okay, there it is. Thought the video went off. You're free to live in alignment with the truth, with what is around you. If somebody is stuck, if somebody is in a state of contraction and suffering, if you're really present, if you're really, present to yourself, to the moment, then you're not indifferent here. You're not indifferent to another being's suffering. In fact, Adyashanti has this very interesting point where he says the people who are most in tune with this way of being, with this open and liberated state, they're the ones that are saying with utmost certainty, that everything is perfect as it is. And yet, they're the ones that are working hardest to help and care for and heal the people around them. And it's a funny thing. Why would it be that if the world is perfect, if the universe is perfect, why would it be that we have people that are working so hard to help heal and care for the other beings around them? And it's because when you are really awake and centered and coming from a place of connection with source, connection with reality, there's a deep love, there's a deep care that existence has for itself. And something that Adyashanti says is that there is awakening is pulled towards and drawn towards what is not awake. And when we see someone in a state of suffering, when we see beings marching before us, lost in their attachments, in their fixations, in their pain, we can't just it hurts us to see them in pain. The Buddha, it said the Buddha cried, wept tears when he realized that everyone in the world is trying to find some kind of happiness, some kind of joy, some kind of love and peace, and all of the things that they're trying to do to get that is exactly what is keeping them stuck in suffering and bondage. And the paradox of that, the irony of that, is heartbreaking. And while you see from this place of openness, of lightness, that everything is happening exactly as it should be, the fact that you care about other human beings, other lives, is also part of the plan. It is part of reality. It is exactly as it should be. But in going to care for others, in going to heal and help others, you can show up not from a kind of hero complex, not from a kind of savior complex, but from a real and genuine place of care and of presence to what is really going on with them. What are their real attachments and fixations? And what would actually help to open that up, even a little bit? Relying on that place of presence when we're speaking with someone, when we're talking, and interacting with someone, that's the place where real healing can happen, where real openness can happen. And when I work with people, I think of it as kind of as light work, where we're shining our light, we're giving our light, but not just so that another person can see how light and great we are, but in a way to help remind another person that they have the same light. The goal is not for them to, be awed and healed by your light, but for them to open up their own light inside of them so that they start shining. And when that happens, they become their own source of healing. They become their own source of wisdom. And they no longer have to rely on you or anybody else for that healing or that wisdom. In essence, you're trying to put yourself out of business. You're trying to essentially remove yourself from a place of power, not by giving up your power or making yourself smaller or less than, but rather by helping them to open up and rise up into their own wisdom, into their own connection with Source. And when I work with people, it's this immense joy to see somebody come into their own and start telling me about the truth, start telling me the Dharma, and I'm like, wow, yes, keep going, please. And it's this immense back and forth of joy, this immense lightness and love and bliss that I get to share with another being. So all this to say that if you are looking for a really good guide to navigating awakening, I really, really recommend this book. It is probably the best book that I've found so far around how to, what does it mean to wake up in the modern world? And how do we actually practically start to release our old conditioning and navigate the state of awakening? Because I think there's just so much, there's so much lack of coherence out there on the internet in terms of what do you actually do? How do you actually move through these different stages? And this book is gold. It is gold. So clear, so simple, and yet just so true. So I'm going to put a link to that book in the description. And if you want to work with me, if you want some guidance and some help, either releasing some of your conditioning to help prepare for an awakening, or you've maybe had an awakening experience, or maybe you're not sure if it was, and you want some help navigating that, you can reach out to me and we can talk about if working together is something that would be helpful and in alignment for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little bit of a long one, but yeah, it's important stuff. I'll see you in the next one.